Thank you. Thank you. Hey, could I see a show of hands, please? How many of you in this room would like to look better, travel the world, and double your current income? Yes! I can help you with none of those things. Let me ask you this. How many of you would like to feel better, probably live longer, and have more sustained energy throughout your workday? I can help you with all of those things. Our topic today is how to have 100 healthy birthdays. I want to begin by introducing you to a person who's done it right. As a matter of fact, she holds the record for having healthy birthdays. You may have heard about her. Her name was Jeanne Calment, and she lived in France and holds the title for the longest living human of modern times. When she died a couple of years ago, she was 122 years old. 122 years old. How many of you in this room would like to live to be 122 years old? Not many hands. How about 100 years old? Still not many hands. How many of you want to make it till next Friday? Raise your hand. Just want to see what your goals are. Now, the reason you don't raise your hand for 122 or 100 is because it's not just about quantity, David. What's it about, everybody? Quality, exactly right. What good is it if we keep you alive in a nursing home with tubes up your nose? Nobody wants that. But that's not the life she had. Her mind was sharp. Her body worked fine until the last couple days of her 122 years. Now, you need to know something about this woman. Being that she lived so long, she was obviously married a long time. This is interesting. How many of you have heard that there seems to be something good for your health if you're part of a committed relationship as you go through life? Have you heard about this? This is pretty well established. It's been around for some time. But what's interesting is that the benefit is not the same for both partners. We see this, for example, at the end of life, and some of you know stories like this. We know, for example, that if the wife dies first, in most cases, the husband's health goes down pretty fast. Don't some of you know stories like that? We're not sure why this is. It could be because most men don't know how to cook and they starve to death. Yes. Yeah. We don't know. But the opposite is not true. Watch this. We know that if the husband dies first, in most cases, the woman just keeps on going. Yeah. Now, what does this mean? This means women are good for men, but men are good for nothing, basically, is what that means, yeah? Now, this is not just happening in France. This is happening in the United States. This is happening around the world. You can now buy birthday cards for 100-year-olds. If you don't believe it, go to a card shop sometime at a mall and ask them. They've got a whole section of birthday cards just for 100-year-olds. They wouldn't do it if there wasn't a market. There's definitely a market. Consider this, would you? Way back in 1960 in the United States, there were 3,000 of what we call these centenarians, these 100-year-olds, coast to coast in the U.S. Don't be impressed by that. This is the fastest growing subpopulation group in America today. There's not 3,000 100-year-olds in our country. Today, there's 80,000 of them. And a whole bunch of them live independently. They're doing just fine, thank you very much. Let me ask you this. If you're like me, you were born between 1946 and 1964, and you're what we call a baby boomer. How many baby boomers do we have in this audience? Most of you. Do you know there's a whole bunch of us out there, and whatever we do affects all of society just because there's so many of us? Well, it's going to affect longevity as well. In the year 2050, which is not that long from now, the average baby boomer who's still alive will be 100. And when that happens, there's not going to be 3,000 or 80,000 100-year-olds in the United States. There's going to be right at 1 million centenarians just in the U.S. This is going to change everything. The whole nation is going to look like Florida. Every car in America will constantly have its blinker on. Everyone will eat dinner at 4 p.m. That's coming. Be ready for that. But this is also not just happening in the U.S. Worldwide, by 2050, over 3 million 100-year-olds on this planet. Things are changing, and we want to make sure that we can increase not only the quantity of your years, but the quality of those years for you as well. Now, you all know the abdominal stimulating devices, you know, like the Abdominizer and all those kind of things that they sold on television for, we're getting real personal here all of a sudden. Now, these things you could buy for like $19, $20 here recently. Listen, until the Federal Trade Commission put those, may I say, scam artists out of business and fined them for $90 million. Or 3 easy payments of $30 million. Either way, that's fine. Now, what this is an electronic stimulating device. It has a power source. You turn this thing on, you get a kind of a current going, and you stick the electrodes on your trouble spots. If you're a man, the gut. If you're a woman, back here on the hip. And you turn this thing on, and you get a little electric stimulation here. Just a little thing like that is going on. Turn that on a little bit more, and you get a little bit more of this going on right here. You can sit there and watch Jerry Springer for a half hour. You can. Just get some of this going right here, and you get the equivalent of like 2,000 sit-ups in a half hour. Yeah. Now, does this work? No. Do I enjoy it? Yes, but that's not the point. That's not the point. First of all, on our 6 steps to longevity is optimism. We see a sense of optimism in these long-lived, healthy lives. And it's not that they're optimistic because they live to be 100. They probably live to 100 to a degree because they've been optimistic. How many of you would agree with me that there's people out there who are pretty much dyed-in-the-wool pessimists? Do you know these people, pessimists? And let me ask you, why did you marry them? Why did you do that? That doesn't make any sense. People who study this kind of thing tell us that once you're set, either as an optimist or a pessimist, you're pretty well set for life unless you purpose to change that, and only you are the one that can change it. Hey, bad things happen to everybody. We all have challenges. But would you agree with me, though? It's not what happens to you, but it's your response to what happens to you that really defines the journey of your life. Yes? Number 2 on our list is something called engagement. And that, in Japan, ikigai, means a passion for living, a reason to get up in the morning. Let me talk to the men for just a minute. Because men, at least in Western society, we often are our jobs. Would you agree with that? We get our identity by what we do. When 2 men get together, we say, hey, what do you do for a living? We figure each other out that way. Now, women can have careers, of course, but women also get their identities from relationships. You're somebody's mom. You're somebody's sister. You're somebody's wife or daughter. So a woman is not so tied to her career as a man is. Men, retirement is a dangerous time for you because now you don't know why you get up in the morning. Now you don't know who you are anymore. So it's important to have something you're passionate about separate from what you've been doing up to this point. By the way, it doesn't have to be something socially significant. It just has to be important to you. People who live in nursing homes do better if they have a plant or a little pet to take care of. Isn't that something? But that's how it works. Let me say this. Hobbies would be a total useless waste of your time if it wasn't for the fact that they're probably so good for your health. Number 3 on our list is activity and mobility. And if you're taking notes, your goal is about 150 minutes a week of moderate activity, such as a brisk walk, or 75 minutes per week of a more intense exercise, like using a treadmill or a stationary bicycle. That's per week, not per day. You all have 75 minutes per week, don't you? That's the place you need to be, or more, if you choose to do so. But most people have a long way to go when it comes to that. Listen to this. 1 out of 4 women that breaks a hip is dead within 12 months. 1 out of 3 men that breaks a hip is dead within 12 months because of the complications that set in when you can no longer be physically active anymore. One of the ways you can avoid breaking a hip is to stay active and stay mobile. It's one of the best things you can do to assure that you're not going to die before your time. Number 4 is something we call adaptation to loss. If you live to be 100, you lose people you care about. Spouses, siblings, friends, family. How many of you know people who are still mourning the loss of a loved one, and it's been 20 years now? Anybody know stories like that? Let me ask you, what good does that do the departed person? None. Would you agree that if they could come back, they'd say thanks, but enough already. Get on with your life. These folks who live to 100 and 100 healthy years have the ability to mourn appropriately, but then they bounce back and they get on with their life. That seems to be a part of the success formula as well, adaptation to loss. Next on our list, number 5, is social connectedness. That is being part of the bigger community. It turns out that people really do need people after all. There's no Lone Rangers out there when it comes to being a long-lived, healthy human. In fact, one study found that not having a close personal friend or confidant is just as dangerous to your health as if you were a smoker. Isn't that amazing? Not having a close personal friend or confidant gives you the same risk to your long-term health as if you are a smoker. So what that means is if you must have a cigarette, do it with a friend. Obviously, we're trying to increase fiber intake in bread, and white bread doesn't have much in it. So I hope you all see that if you're eating wheat bread, you might as well go back to white bread because you're already eating white bread. But if you're eating whole wheat, then you've arrived. But you might want to know, how can I tell if a product has fiber in it or not? Well, I want to show you the David Meinz fiber test. So when you have a product like this and you're not sure of the fiber content, just slightly apply just a little bit of pressure. Just a little bit of pressure. See, that's low fiber. That's what that is, low fiber. Low fiber, yes. Now, then carefully pull it back out, put it back on the shelf, and then walk away. But you need to realize that gut fat is very dangerous fat. Gut fat is moving in and out of your blood system all the time. Hip fat is not dangerous because once it's back there, ladies, would you agree? It likes it back there. It's in the shade, it's cool, it has a lemonade, and it stays there for 50 years. But gut fat is moving in and out all the time, which at times can actually be good. Ladies, have you ever noticed that if you're doing a weight loss program with the man in your life, he has a much easier time of it than you? You know why that is? It's because where he's getting his calories from, right here. The downside of that is that it's also raising his triglyceride levels, it's raising his bad LDL, all of these other risk factors that increases cardiovascular disease risk, which in general is why the average American, at least in the States, lives about 7 years less than the average woman. Now, the problem with the bathroom scale is that it just tells you weight. It doesn't tell you what that weight is made up of. As I said, it could be muscle. You never want to lose muscle. It could be fat, and that's what you want to lose. And it could be water, but that's temporary. You never want to lose muscle. You never really need to lose water either. Fat on your body is the problem. But watch this. You could have a 6-foot man, 200 pounds, solid muscle. And the doctor will look on the height and weight table for 6 foot and see 200 pounds and say, you're overweight. Really? Where is this guy supposed to lose weight? He's solid muscle. He doesn't have any fat on him. On the other hand, you could have a 6 foot, 180 pound, middle-aged businessman who's got a gut hanging over his belt right here. And the doctor looks at 6 foot, 180 pounds and says, not bad. Clearly, your eyes will tell you one of these men is in good shape and the other isn't. But the height and weight table has some real problems because the scale has some real limitations. We've got something better than the height and weight table, and it's the tape measure. I would encourage all of you to get a tape measure and stop using your bathroom scale, because the tape measure is going to tell you where the real problem is, and if you carry it here, That's the problem. Ladies, you might not like it back here, but that's not going to hurt you nearly as much. Consider, if you would, this. The greater your waist size, the greater your risk of these problems in your future. High blood pressure, diabetes, cholesterol, metabolic syndrome, which is a whole bunch of cholesterol risk factors together. And look at that, can you believe it? Asthma. Your risk for asthma goes up the greater your waist size. I never would have put those two together. And chronic obstructive pulmonary disease. By the way, your waist size is a much better predictor of your future health than the old height and weight and even the fancy BMI, body mass index, that so many people like. Your waist size is better. Now, here are the numbers I'd like you to write down. Ladies, you don't want your numbers to go above 35 inches or 90 centimeters for your waist. Gentlemen, for you, you don't want to go over 40 inches or 102 centimeters. When it does, you've got one of those diseases I just mentioned in your future. Now, this brings up another question as well. How do you measure waist size? How do you measure waist size? Sitting where you are right now, I want you to see if you all can find two bones right here. Can you all find two bones right at the top of your pelvis? It's called the iliac crest. Now, if you can't find those bones, that's a risk factor right there. Press harder. Now, find those two bones and then measure at that point parallel to the floor all the way around your waist. I want you to compare that to your measurements that we just talked about here as well in terms of the number for women or for the numbers for men. One more thing, ladies, you know it's hard to lose hip fat. I don't have to tell you that. There is one way in research that's pretty clear that shows you how you can take hip fat off, but you're not going to like it. You can take hip fat off by breastfeeding. And some of you women are thinking, that ship has sailed. That train has left the station. Grandma, put that baby down. There's an image that'll stick in your mind tonight. Come on over here. And your name is? Joanne. That's correct. Now, Joanne, stand right here, please. And we're going to ask you some questions to see if you've been paying attention. So you have to watch the screen there, and we're going to ask some questions as soon as our director. It's called What's Your Nutrition IQ? Let's give her a hand, everybody. Yay. Okay. The pressure's on, Joanne. Which of the following foods can help you lower your risk of heart disease? Ding-dongs, moon pies, salmon burgers, or cheese doodles?
Salmon burgers.
Are you sure? She says salmon burgers, yes! Now, this whole topic can get confusing, especially when it comes to weight control, especially when it comes to exercise, too. For example, this next man is confused about exercise. He's confused about exercise. See? He's confused. His dog is skinny, that's good. These next two guys are confused about exercise as well. They're taking the escalator to the fitness center. They're confused. And here's something I bet you don't know. You should never swallow bubble gum during aerobics class. You should never swallow bubble gum during aerobics class. Otherwise, this could happen. So don't do that. Get a tape measure. Find out how much of you is fat, and the tape measure tells you that kind of thing. And if you don't even have a tape measure, you can do the David Meinz at-home body fat test. Want to know how much body, if you have too much body fat on your body? It's very simple. Here's what you do. Leave the prosperity conference tonight, then go home, go directly into the house. Don't talk to anybody. Hey, how was the don't talk. Go right in the bathroom and lock the door. Stand in front of a full-length mirror. Take all of your clothes off. Jump up and down. If it moves and it shouldn't, it's fat. That's it.